The 55 by 5 method is not a ritual, it is not a trend. It is one of the most direct ways to speak to the part of you that actually runs your life, and most people have never been told that part exists, let alone how to reach it. There is a version of you right now that knows exactly what you want. You can see it. You can feel it in quiet moments, but something keeps the distance between you and it feeling impossible to close. That distance has a name. It is the gap between what your conscious mind desires and what your subconscious mind has already decided is true about who you are. And that gap is not closed by trying harder. It is not closed by wanting more. It is closed by going deeper, by learning to speak directly to the part of you that nothing else can reach. Because here is what most people never realize. The life you are living right now is not a reflection of what you want. It is a reflection of what your subconscious mind believes is normal for you. And until that changes, nothing else will. Your conscious mind, the part that sets goals and makes plans and feels determined, that part has very little actual power over your results. It can want something deeply. It can see the vision clearly. It can be fully committed. And still nothing changes. Because the part of you that determines your outcomes is not your willpower. It is your subconscious identity. It is the image your deeper mind holds of who you are, what you deserve, what is possible for someone like you. And that image does not care about your intentions. It only cares about what feels familiar. Think of a thermostat set to a specific temperature. You can open every window, bring in every fan, try everything you can from the outside. But the moment you stop, the thermostat quietly does its job. The temperature returns to the setting. Your subconscious mind works exactly the same way. It has been set to a certain identity, a certain self-image, a certain felt sense of what is normal and safe and real for you. And no matter what you consciously want, it will keep pulling your life back to that setting. This is not a flaw in you. It is a feature of the deeper mind. It is built to protect consistency, to keep your inner world stable, to make sure nothing unfamiliar takes hold without enough exposure to feel safe. The problem is not that this system exists. The problem is that most people are trying to override it from the outside, when the only way through is from the inside. You cannot outthink the subconscious. You cannot motivate your way past it. You cannot push through it with more effort. You have to speak to it in the only language it has ever responded to. And that language is not strategy. It is not willpower. It is repetition. This is where the 55 by 5 method begins to make sense on a level that goes far beyond a simple writing exercise. When you write a single statement 55 times in one sitting, you are not doing a task. You are sending a signal, a clear, deliberate, repeated signal to the part of your mind that controls how you see yourself. Neuroscience has a phrase for this. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time you write that sentence, another neural connection forms. Another thread of belief is quietly laid down inside you. And after 55 repetitions, those threads begin to weave into something that feels less like a wish and more like a memory. Not a memory of something that happened to you. A memory of something that is simply true about who you are. This is not about positive thinking. This is not about forcing yourself to believe something through sheer will. This is about understanding how the subconscious mind actually receives new information. It does not receive it through a declaration made once, no matter how loudly or how desperately. It receives it through repetition, through rhythm, through the experience of something being stated not once but again and again, until the deeper mind stops questioning it and simply begins to absorb it as fact. The 5 days of the practice matter just as much as the 55 repetitions within a single session, because one day is a moment. 5 days is the beginning of a pattern, and a pattern is the language the subconscious understands at its deepest level. It is the very language that built your current beliefs in the first place, not from one conversation, not from a single experience, from something heard or felt or witnessed again and again, until it became the quiet background truth you stopped questioning altogether. You were not born believing the things you believe about yourself right now. Those beliefs were installed slowly, through repetition, through environments that kept confirming the same story about who you are and what is possible for you. And what was built through repetition can be rebuilt through repetition. That is not a spiritual idea. That is simply how the architecture of the mind works. And once you understand that, the 55 by 5 method stops being something you try. It becomes something you use with precision, because precision is what this requires, not intensity, not emotional effort. Just the quiet, consistent act of returning to the same statement, day after day, line after line, until the message is no longer being received, until it is being remembered, until it is no longer something you are saying to yourself. It is something your subconscious mind has quietly begun to say about you. That shift, that crossing from conscious repetition to subconscious acceptance, is where everything changes, not in a dramatic moment, not in a revelation. In the quiet, unremarkable experience of one day simply feeling like someone for whom this is already true. And that is where we are going. There is something important to understand about why most people never experience this shift. It is not because the method does not work. It is because they approach it the way they approach everything else, with urgency, with expectation, with the energy of someone waiting for proof before they are willing to believe. And the subconscious mind does not respond to urgency. It does not reward impatience. It rewards consistency. It rewards the kind of quiet certainty that does not need evidence because it already knows the truth it is planting. This is the internal posture that separates the people who experience real change from the people who walk away from practices like this, saying they tried it and it did not work. The method worked. The energy they brought to it did not. And that is something we will come back to. Because how you approach the 55 by 5 practice matters as much as the practice itself. Most people who try the 55 by 5 method are still doing it wrong, not because they are careless, not because they are uncommitted, because they are doing it as an outsider. They are writing the statement 55 times the way you fill out a form mechanically, dutifully waiting for it to work, and that is the problem. The 55 by 5 method is not a task you complete. It is an identity you are stepping into, and the moment you approach it as a task, you have already missed the point. Think of an actor preparing for a role. A great actor does not simply memorize the lines and deliver them accurately. They find the truth of the character. They locate the inner life, the way that person walks through the world, the feeling they carry in their body at all times, and then they do not pretend to be that person. They become them. From the inside, this is what the 55 by 5 method is asking of you. Not to write a statement you hope will be true. To write a statement you are willing to inhabit. To write from inside the version of yourself for whom this is already the reality. That shift in posture changes everything because the subconscious mind is extraordinarily sensitive. It does not just receive the words, it receives the emotional frequency underneath the words. If you are writing with doubt, it receives doubt. If you are writing with impatience, it receives resistance. If you are writing with the quiet, settled certainty of someone who already knows, it receives that too, and it begins to build accordingly. This is why two people can follow the exact same method and have completely different results. One sits down to write and does so from a place of hoping. The other sits down and does so from a place of knowing. The first is asking the subconscious to believe something new. The second is reminding the subconscious of something it is already becoming. That is the identity shift that makes this method work at its deepest level. Consider the way a child learns. Language. No child sits down and decides to learn a language. No child applies willpower, sets a goal, measures their progress. They are simply immersed. The sounds come again and again, day after day, in every environment, in every context, until one morning the child does not hear a foreign sound anymore. They hear meaning. They hear their own language, not because they forced it, because repetition, combined with emotional presence and total immersion, reached a point where the new pattern simply became the default. This is what you are doing with the 55 by 5 method. You are not trying to convince an unwilling mind, you are immersing a receptive one. The difference is enormous. When you sit down to write your statement, you are not arguing with your old identity. You are quietly, patiently building a new one, word by word, line by line, session by session. And the writing matters because it engages more of your neurology than simply thinking the statement or speaking it. When you write by hand, you activate motor pathways, visual pathways, and language centers simultaneously. You are not just thinking the thought, you are etching it. Every line you write is a groove being carved a little deeper into the neural architecture of who you believe yourself to be. Now, here is the layer that most people miss entirely. Your statement must be written in the present tense, not as a future hope, not as a goal you are moving toward, as a current truth. Because the subconscious mind does not understand future tense, it only understands now. The moment you write the statement as something you are becoming, the subconscious treats it as something that is not yet true. The moment you write it as something that already is, the subconscious begins building a reality that matches it. Woman who writes every day for 5 days that she is someone who attracts abundance effortlessly is not telling herself a lie. She is instructing her subconscious on what to begin noticing, what opportunities to begin registering, what actions to begin feeling natural. She is not changing the world outside her. She is changing the filter through which she experiences it. And that filter is the only thing that has ever determined what she sees as possible. There is a phenomenon researchers call confirmation bias. It is the tendency of the mind to notice, remember, and prioritize information that confirms what it already believes to be true. Most people understand this as a cognitive flaw, but it is also a tool, because what you believe about yourself determines what your mind consistently selects from every experience you have. Walk into a room believing you are someone who struggles, and your mind will find every piece of evidence in that room that confirms the struggle. Walk in believing you are someone who moves through life with ease and clarity. And that same room with the same people, the same energy, will yield a completely different experience, not because the room changed, because the filter changed. This is what the 55 by 5 method is doing at a deeper level than most people allow themselves to understand. It is not manufacturing false confidence. It is recalibrating the lens through which you interpret everything. And that recalibration is cumulative. Day 1, you write 55 lines and you feel perhaps a little lighter, a little more aligned. Day 2, you write again and something has already shifted. Something subtle in how you carry yourself through the morning. By day 5, you are not just writing a statement. You are reinforcing a self-concept that has begun to take root. And here is what happens. When a self-concept begins to take root, your decisions quietly change. Not through force, not through discipline, through congruence. You begin to make the choices that feel natural for the person you have been writing yourself into being. You begin to notice things you did not notice before. You begin to respond to situations differently, not because you are trying to act differently, but because you are beginning to feel like a different person, and feeling is everything, because behavior follows identity, not the other way. Around every time you have tried to change a behavior without first changing the identity underneath it, the behavior collapsed eventually because it had nothing to stand on. The 55 by 5 method builds the foundation first. It plants the identity deeply enough that when the new behavior emerges, it emerges naturally, the way a tree grows from a root that was quietly strengthening underground long before any branch appeared. You do not have to force the tree to grow. You only have to tend the root. That is what these 5 days are. That is what every one of these 55 lines is. The tending of something real, something already inside you, waiting only for the consistent signal that says it is safe to grow. And when you sit down tomorrow for day 2, or day 3, or whichever session comes next, carry that understanding with you, not the pressure of making it work, the quiet certainty that it already is. There is a reason most people do not finish what they start, not because they are weak, not because the method failed them, because they never understood what they were actually doing. They sat down, they wrote the statement, they counted to 55, and they waited. And when nothing dramatic happened by the end of day 1, a quiet voice inside them whispered that this was not going to work, and they believed that voice more than they believed the practice. This is the first and most important thing to understand about doing the 55 by 5 method correctly. The practice is not the writing. The practice is what you bring to the writing. Before you sit down, before you pick up the pen, before you write a single word, there is a decision that determines everything that follows. The decision to already be the person who this is true for. Not to try to become them, not to hope you might become them, to step into them before the pen touches the paper. Think of someone who has been told they will receive a gift, a truly expected gift, something they were promised, something they are certain is coming. They do not sit down with tension in their body. They do not grip the table and try to force the gift to arrive faster. They carry a quiet certainty, a relaxed knowing that what is meant for them is already in motion. This is the exact internal state the 55 by 5 method requires. Not desperate wanting, not effortful reaching, settled knowing. And the moment you write from that place, the method stops feeling like a ritual and begins feeling like a conversation. A quiet, daily conversation between who you are becoming and the deeper mind that will decide whether to believe it. Now let us talk about what the practice actually looks like when it is done with precision. You choose one statement, just one, not 3, not 5, not a rotating list of desires. One statement that represents the core shift you are making in your self-concept. And that statement must meet 3 conditions. It must be written in present tense. It must feel like a stretch but not a lie. And it must carry enough emotional weight that when you read it as already true, something in you shifts. Something. Like I am someone who lives with deep confidence and ease, or I am someone whose decisions are guided and certain. Not what you want to have. Who you already are in this new version of yourself that you are writing into existence 55 times a day for 5 consecutive days. Here is where most people lose the practice entirely without realizing it. They break the 5 days not intentionally. Day 3 arrives and something comes up. Life interrupts. They miss a session. And then they tell themselves they will pick up tomorrow. They will do day 3 again. They will continue from where they left off. This is the misunderstanding. The 5 days are not about accumulating sessions. They are about building an unbroken signal. Imagine sending a message that requires consistent signal strength to transmit fully. The moment the signal drops, even for a day, the transmission does not simply pause. It weakens. The subconscious mind reads the gap as evidence, not as an accident, as evidence that the new identity is not yet real enough to be prioritized, that the old default is still the dominant frequency. And so when the practice resumes, you are not continuing. You are beginning again, not from failure, but from the beginning of a new unbroken 5 days. This is not a punishment. It is simply how the method works. The power is in the continuity. The 5 consecutive days without interruption are not a rule someone invented arbitrarily. They are a reflection of how long consistent repetition needs to run before the subconscious begins treating a new pattern as part of its operating identity, rather than as an incoming suggestion it is still deciding whether to accept. Now here is the second thing most people get wrong. They treat each session as isolated. They write their 55 lines, they close the notebook, and they return to their normal self-concept for the rest of the day. They laugh at their doubts. They agree with the old story when it surfaces in a conversation or a mirror or a quiet moment. And then they return the next day expecting the method to have done its work despite the hours they spent contradicting it. The 55 by 5 method is not a separate practice from your life. It is a declaration about how you intend to move through your life. And the more your hours outside the writing begin to align with the identity you are writing into being, the faster the subconscious accepts it as the new default. You do not have to be perfect outside the sessions. You do not have to force every thought to align, but you must at least stop loudly agreeing with the old identity that you are trying to replace. By day 5, something has changed. You may not be able to point to it exactly. The outside world may look identical, but there is a quality inside you that feels different. A quiet solidity, a sense of something having been decided that you did not consciously decide. This is the most honest description of what the 55 by 5 method produces when it is practiced correctly. Not a dramatic shift, not a sudden manifestation, a settling. A feeling that the new identity is no longer something you are building, it is something you are standing in. And from that standing place, the world begins to reorganize itself around you, not because you are forcing it, because your perception has changed. Your expectations have changed, and expectation is not passive. Expectation is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. When you expect good things, you move toward them differently. You speak differently. You hold yourself differently. You interpret ambiguous situations in your favor rather than against yourself. All of this changes when the identity underneath your behavior changes, and that is the closing truth of the 55 by 5 method. It is not a shortcut. It is not magic. It is the most fundamental form of psychological work available to you. The work of going beneath the surface of behavior, beneath the surface of habit, all the way down to the level of identity, and quietly, persistently, deliberately rewriting what you believe is true about yourself. Think of a river that has carved a deep channel through rock over many years. That channel is your current identity. The water of your thoughts, your choices, your interpretations of what happens to you, all of it flows naturally through that channel because that channel is what your inner life has carved deepest. The 55 by 5 method does not try to stop the river by force. It begins quietly to carve a new channel, line by line, day by day. And as the new channel deepens, the water begins to find it naturally, not because anyone forced it, because water always finds its deepest path. You are the water. Your identity is the channel. And for 5 days, 55 lines at a time, you have been carving something new, something truer, something that belongs to the version of you that has always existed just beneath the surface of who you have been told you are. That version does not need to be built. Say it only needs to be uncovered, and now you know how.